So today we're going to take a look at dangling and misplaced modifiers. And so in order to do that, we're going to have to talk about style with an adverbial. So we're going to return to our phrase, which is you live only once, and we'll talk about how we actually get there. So follow along. So if I said I got up early to study for my AP biology test, well, if I were to diagram this, I would find that I have a subject I and I have a verb, got up. And then I have these other adverbial structures. I got up early and I got up Y to study for my AP biology test. But the heart of the sentence is just a pattern six. I got up. I awoke, in a sense. And the point here that I'm making, that the author also makes, is the main sentence is kind of boring. I got up. But what really makes the sentence interesting, what really is the heart of the sentence, is the fact that you got up early. The fact of the sentence is that you got up early to study for my AP biology test. And the point is, an adverbial really is sort of considered not that important to the sentence, unless it's a pattern 1 where you have to have it. But the point is, in patterns 2 through 10, you oftentimes sort of lack something if you don't have the adverb. So therefore, an adverb or an adverbial is really important to the sentence. Even though it's not important to the sentence pattern, it oftentimes is really important to the meaning of the sentence. So where we place it is actually really critical. So the point here is it might be treated as something that's not really important, but it really is important. And we have to pay close attention to where it's placed because that can change the meaning of the sentence. And the SAT loves moving adverbs around to see if you know exactly where you're supposed to put them. So if I said Mr. Gallagher wrecked his motorcycle yesterday, a sentence we've had before, well, if I put the adverb at the end of the sentence, it kind of takes the whole focus. And now the focus is when. When did he wreck his motorcycle? Yesterday. So the adverb can be the focus. If I decide to put it at the very beginning of the sentence and I said yesterday, Mr. Gallagher wrecked his motorcycle, well, now the focus is on the word what, or the question what, rather. And the question is, he wrecked his motorcycle. And that becomes the focus. In this case, the adverb is just sort of a transition. So even though the adverb really isn't that important to the sentence in terms of its pattern, it can turn into the focus. It can also turn into the transition, depending on where we want to put it. So just some nuggets for you to remember. The most important thing I want you to remember for today is what we call the adverbs of emphasis. I might write this down. So certain adverbs have certain focus depending on where they're placed. And so an adverb where it's placed will kind of change the meaning of the sentence. So if I said, I hardly slept last night, or I slept hardly at all last night, you can kind of hear that I'm hitting these words a little harder than all the rest of them. I hardly slept last night. Or I slept hardly at all last night. My wife never has trouble sleeping. Hear how I hit that word never? Some people are always well rested in the morning. Mr. Marsh tells me that he rarely stays awake past 10 o'clock. So these are what we call adverbs of emphasis, because regardless of where you put them in the sentence, they kind of steal the focus, and that's kind of neat. Once again, the adverb is not supposed to be that important to the sentence, but it really is. And some of these adverbs, which we call adverbs of emphasis, regardless of where you put them, they steal the focus. So we have to be very careful about where we put them because you can change the meaning of a sentence. So here's a dandy little list of all the adverbs of emphasis that we should be aware of. Very careful where we place them in the sentence because they steal the focus. When you read a sentence with one of these words, you're going to hit this word harder than all the other words. But there's one adverb of emphasis that I didn't put on the list because he's special, and that's the word only. Let's focus on that. The word only is different because unlike the adverbs of emphasis, which kind of take the focus of the whole sentence, the word only also takes the focus of the sentence. But he does one other thing. He brings a friend along with him. Every time you use the word only, he brings the next word with him as part of the focus. So if I said, I'm working only 3 days this week, I'm kind of focusing on only 3. If I said, the car only looks old, it's really quite new, I'm focusing on only looks. If I said Monica's boyfriend isn't only funny, he's rich too, I'm saying only funny. Now, if I said Bo does chores only on Saturdays, I'm saying only on Saturdays. And so what happens is when I use the word only, I'm focusing on the next word. I'm working only 3 days this week, not 4. Or if I say my car only looks old, it actually really isn't. If I said Monica's boyfriend isn't only funny, he's rich too. Or if I said Bo does chores only on Saturdays, I'm focusing not just simply on the word only, but I'm emphasizing the very next word. And that's how we sometimes get into trouble with the word only, because sometimes we put it in the wrong place and he brings along the wrong friend. Let me show you what I mean. If I said, I'm only working 3 days this week, well, you're not only working, you're doing other things. So you're not really focusing on the word working. You're supposed to be focusing on the word three. If I said Bo only does chores on Saturdays, he doesn't only do. It's not that I'm focusing on the doing, it's on the Saturdays. So I'm not saying he only does chores. He does chores only on Saturdays. I wouldn't say we're only going to be gone for 2 or 3 days. We're not only going. That's not the focus. The focus is we're going to be gone only for 2 or 3 days. And if I said Jenna refuses to watch NASCAR, she only likes football. Well, she doesn't only like. That's not the focus. We're not focusing on the word like. We're saying she likes only football. The word only should be next to the word that it wants to travel with, that it wants to emphasize. So therefore, when someone says you only live once, that's not correct. You don't only live, you do other things. And the focus isn't on the word living, it's on the idea that you have one life. The focus is on the number one. So what you should really say is you live only once. Only wants to bring along his friend once. So instead of saying YOLO, if you're still living back in 2011, you should say instead YOLO, because you live only once.